All right, we got the Davos left-wing corporate corpocracy, neo-socialist, whatever we want to call them. And by the way, it's a corrupt organization. They had to throw out the leadership and bring in new. I don't know if it's going to survive. Mr. Trump is going to Davos, so we will talk about it with John Carney, ace financial journalist, and E.J. Antoni, Heritage Foundation chief economist. Gentlemen, welcome. So I want, as full-throated, I want his speech. Now, I asked this to Scott Bessent when I interviewed him on Friday. Full-throated, America first, tax cuts, deregulation, drill, baby, drill, reciprocal free trade, numbers, we're in a Trump boom. I don't need all this, these little affordability things around the edges, which look like government meddling and really aren't part of the 10% cap on the credit card rates, unless you have strong disagree. Full-throated Trump, look at this, 5% growth, maybe more. Productivity is coming down. We're creating more. The whole 9 yards. I want to see a great speech. I believe he's speaking Wednesday. Do you think I'm going to get it?
I hope you will. Look, Ronald Reagan used to have an idea that was called convergence, which is we modeled the right economy for the rest of the world. We don't try to tell everybody how to run their economy, but we say, look to us. We cut our taxes. We're cutting regulation. You should follow our example. That's exactly what President Trump should do when he goes to Davos and say, I have the right model. You should follow the model the U.S. is putting out there for you. Energy abundance, low regulation, low taxes, and your economies will thrive as well.
Because it's like, look what it's doing for us. I hope once again, EJ, and Trump did this in the White House speech in December. Use numbers. The numbers bear him out. The numbers are fabulous coming in, left and right. I mean, 5% GDP. I mean, we've been through the 12% capital X spending, those kinds of things. Phenomenal numbers coming in faster. Use the numbers. I think John is right. There's a certain humility to this. We're not dictating to them. It's up to them. But here's our example. Why don't you follow it? And then he's going to have a lot to say about tariffs, EJ. In Greenland, yes, but in general, he's going to have a lot to say. Let's keep our deal. I mean, I think that's what he's going to go. What are you expecting?
Yeah, Larry, I think that's right. But the thing I'm really expecting is that I think the posture he's going to take when he gets there, and that's one of strength, because we do have the hottest economy, as you're talking about, right? Whether it's GDP, whether it's productivity, those numbers are up. Oil production is up. Nat gas, what's down? Inflation. That's about it, right? Everything else is looking up. Investment numbers are looking fabulous for this year. They ended last year on a high note. So again, he's going into these negotiations, which is what this is. Right? It's a negotiation. He's going into that with the strongest economy in the world, growing faster than China, for crying out loud. So again, he's approaching it from a position of strength, and that means he can really lean on the tariff conversation, I think, because he has even more leverage than he did a week or two ago, let's say.
We got a deal on tariffs. They should keep the deal. It's basically 15%. I'm going to say generally 15% tariff. The Europeans are all aflutter about Greenland. They're going to lose that battle. They have to lose that battle. I mean, there's no question they're going to lose. I mean, Denmark, what did he say? 2 dog sleds. That's what Denmark has. And that's, is that a cheap shot? No, because that's basically the only defense they have against China and Russia. But I think tariffs, and I'll tell you what else, John. Energy diplomacy. Energy. All of the greeny stuff, Europe, catastrophe.
Right.
Get rid of it. We will sell you all the natural gas in the world. We'll build natural gas terminals. Play ball with us. That should be part of his message. Natural gas, oil, installations, stop screwing around. We can do this.
He could also explain to them what they're already seeing, which is when China realized that the U.S. was no longer going to be the dumping ground for Chinese overproduction, they turned to Europe. So he could deliver them the message, guys, you do not have to be the passive recipient of Chinese industrial policy. We said no to them. You can too. Join our side. Look, by the way, if you want to, I've heard people say, well, China will make a more reliable ally because they don't like Trump's tariff. Yes, good luck with that. If you want to go China's way, that's fine. You can choose that path, but it will prove disastrous for your society. Choose, once again, Europe is faced with the choice. Which side do you want to be on, the free world or the unfree world? And I think the Europeans will choose the free world.
You want to hurt Russia? You want to hurt Russia and Ukraine? Play ball with us on natural gas and fossil fuels, right? Get the prices of these things down. It'll really hurt. Russia's the one being hurt. China's the one that's being hurt. Which side is Europe going to be on? You're exactly right on that point. Look, I don't want to obsess about this, but one more point. Europe's allegiance, Europe's sway on climate change caused them catastrophic harm. Their economies have not really yet recovered. Is that fair? I mean, you look at Germany and France and Britain, there's no Denmark. I mean, they have so much oil and gas and they wouldn't do a thing with it because of climate change. They are not yet recovered from that. I mean, high taxes is a killer. High regulations is a killer. But they lost out so badly on energy because they bought into the Biden climate change stuff and the UN climate change stuff and whatever. They got to change. I don't know if Davos is anything, but they got to do something.
Well, Larry, if there's any kind of impetus for change, I don't think it's going to come from Davos for them, because who are the people who run this? They're the exact same ones who got Europe into this energy mess in the first place, right? Who said, no, get rid of your nuclear, use all this green energy technology that doesn't work, whether it's wind or solar, go be reliant on Putin for your natural gas, don't get any from the United States, and look how it turned out for them. I mean, and it's particularly hurt their manufacturing sector. You're absolutely right that it's hurt the EU economy broadly, but the manufacturing sector in particular has really taken it on the chin. And some of that is because obviously the energy inputs in terms of using energy as energy, but also you use things like natural gas to produce all kinds of chemical blend stocks.
It's clean. It's clean.
Exactly.
Clean. They even said it's clean.
But the costs are 4x but the costs are 4x in Europe, Larry. Can you believe that? 4 times what they are here in the United States for some of these chemicals.
We can help them. A lot of people are going to, 2 other points here. A lot of people are going to say Trump's tariff threat on Greenland is going to cause the market to crater at the open tomorrow. He said, and I read it in Truth Social, he said he's willing to negotiate. He said it. Now, if anybody pays any attention to that, but do you think the market's going to crater when it opens tomorrow?
I think the market has learned the lesson from the panic of Liberation Day. Remember how bad things were right after Liberation Day? And then they figured out that these are the beginnings and not the end. This is not the policy that Donald Trump has announced is what he's bringing to the table, and he will get, and so I don't expect that we will see the Greenland tariffs get imposed at the level they are, although it's important, he's not bluffing. If they don't come sit at the table, that will happen, right? That will happen, but I think Europe knows now.
He said we're open to negotiation. The USA is immediately open to negotiation. Okay. But you're right. I mean, he's quite serious. Now, this is a very serious question. Is Kevin Hassett out as Fed chair? All right. And I'm going to say not so fast. I know. Here, can we play? Do we have the statement? Put it up on the full screen. What the president said regarding Kevin Hassett. Here it comes. Here it comes. I think it's actually his sound. Play the tape, please.
I see Kevin's in the audience, and I just want to thank you. You were fantastic on television today. I actually want to keep you where you are, if you want to know the truth. Kevin Hassett is so good. I'm saying, wait a minute. If I move him, these Fed guys, certainly the one we have now, they don't talk much. I would lose you. It's a serious concern to me. So I just want to say thank you very much. You've done incredible. We don't want to lose him, Susie, but we'll see how it all works out.
See that right there, then, to see how it all works out. We don't want to lose him. He's not leaving the planet. What do you think, EJ? Is Kevin Hassett out as Fed chair, or is he still in play?
Definitely still in play. I think that was another example of strategic ambiguity on the part of the president.
I know. Those last couple words.
Right. When he says, we'll see how it all works out, I think Michael Faulkner made a really good point on the radio this weekend when he said the greatest thing about putting Hassett in the Fed is not because he'll follow Trump's orders. He'll run monetary policy properly. He'll run it independently, but it will be because we have somebody who understands the Trump economy. All these guys at the Fed do not understand the Trump economy, and they're allergic to growth. When the economy starts growing, they say, uh-oh, better raise rates. Got to put a brake to that. Kevin Hassett's not that guy. He'd be a great leader at the Fed and a great defender of the Trump economy.
Change the whole thing. Now, he's not the only one, but I'm just saying he'll change the whole thing. There's one thing I forgot before I go out, EJ. If Lisa Cook, Fed, she's still on the board, all right, she's being busted, as far as I know, 3 mortgage fraud infractions about her primary residence, all right? Ann Arbor, Michigan, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Atlanta, Georgia. Why? I mean, if she's guilty, then she should be off the board. Cause. Trump should be. It's a big decision. Yeah. The Fed's going to have a hearing, not a decision. What do you make of this one? I didn't want to forget this one. Sorry.
Larry, this is another case where it just seems so black and white. But like just about everything with Powell, it doesn't matter how black and white it is. Look at how he has completely messed up monetary policy. You can look at when he said now is a good time to cut rates given where the labor market is at, where inflation is at. And then you fast forward from Biden years to Trump years, and you see conditions are even more favorable for a rate cut. But now for some reason they want to hold off. Is it black and white or is it not? With Powell, I don't think it ever is, because I think there's much more going on than, again, what is right there in black and white.
Jay Powell says he's going to sit in the hearing. Ooh, this is part of his martyrdom.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think Lisa Cook's going to lose the case, but I do think she was assisted.
You think she's going to lose the case?
I think she is going to lose. I think she will be removed. I think the law is pretty clear that she should go. I think, though, her case was helped a little bit by the subpoenas that went to Jay Powell. Because, look, the Supreme Court justices see this. They read the stories. To the extent that they fear that this is a sort of a takeover of the Fed. Remember, one of the arguments against allowing Trump to fire is that it would undermine independence of the Federal Reserve. The subpoenas just, coming right beforehand add to that argument. But ultimately, I think the Supreme Court looks at the law and says, we don't really have a choice here. This is cause. This should be removable. Trump's going to win this.
I remember well, Henry II wanted to remove this meddlesome priest, Thomas Becket, and his follower. He said that, and his followers killed him. I think didn't necessarily want to kill him.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that I want. Can I just remove the subpoena here and get him off on his?
Donald Trump should, before the hearing, pardon Jay Powell. It'll drive Jay Powell crazy, but he'll say, you know what? You're off the hook, buddy. I give you my pardon.
I so wanted you to say this pardon thing. I just kept teasing it, and finally you hit the
Will Powell accept it is the question. I mean, he might like being a martyr enough that he will refuse
Rid
the pardon.
me of this meddlesome priest. John Carney, E.J. Antoni.
The U.S. taking control of Greenland. So what are we talking about? An acquisition of Greenland? Are you going to pay for it? I mean,
we're talking about it. It's really being negotiated now, the details of it, but essentially it's total access. It's there's no end. There's no time limit. We're not doing a 99 or a 10-year or anything else, the famous 99-year deals that you hear about, because countries can't do it for that. Countries go on longer. And so I think it's going to be something that's very well, already it's being reviewed very well. Well, I noticed the stock market went up very substantially after we announced it. But the details are being negotiated now. It'll be very good.
So, because the GDP of Greenland is like $3.3 billion, but people are valuing Greenland of between $50 billion and almost $1 trillion. So what are you willing to pay for Greenland?
Well, I'm not going to have to pay anything. We're going to have total access to Greenland. We're going to have all military access that we want. We're going to be able to put what we need on Greenland because we want it. We're talking about national security and international security. So we're going to not have to pay anything other than the fact that we are building the Golden Dome. And the Golden Dome is going to be something that's going to be very amazing. It'll be Israel times probably 100. And we need it. I think we need it. And it's all going to be made in the United States.
And I'm back with the panel, Lee Carter and John Lonsky. And, John, it sounds like the negotiations are around protecting Greenland. Maybe this is something NATO is going to do collectively, because the president just said he's not going to pay anything for Greenland, but he's going to have total access. Your reaction?
Yeah, I think this agreement strengthens NATO, where the fear was not too long ago that we were
That's
weakening.
What he said, yeah.
Yeah, in danger of destroying NATO. That's not happening. I think it strengthens our ties with Europe, too. This has to be viewed positively. The most important aspect of this agreement might be that it keeps Russia and China out of Greenland. That's important not only for
that is
national
the bottom
security,
line.
but also for mineral rights.
Yes, that's absolutely right, because it is rich in oil and gas and minerals. But Lee, he's got everybody on the run in terms of European leaders here in Davos. They're all trying to get a moment with President Trump. I just sat down with him for 25 minutes, and he went through some of the conversations he's having. He was calm and collected and really on point in terms of what he wants for the United States, and his agenda is wrapped in national security.
You know, I think it's fascinating because there's usually so much news that breaks out of Davos. And there really is a lot of news that is breaking outside of Davos, outside of Donald Trump, but nobody's paying attention to any of it because he is the news. He's at the center of every conversation. It's not just Greenland. It's all across the conversation and what is sort of what is happening globally. I do agree, John. We're seeing a huge strength in strengthening of NATO. I think we're going to see a lot of people walking back their comments about Greenland and saying how scary this was, how bombastic this was of Donald Trump. Never bet against Donald Trump. He knew what he was doing. He had a clear strategy here. And you look at this in the context of everything else that's going on. Look at what's happened with Venezuela, what the impact of that is on China and Russia. Look at that, like what's happening with Greenland, the impact that's going to have on China and Russia. We're really changing world order here and a new philosophy. And he's really laying out America first across the board, and he's not apologizing for it. It's a very different tone, and he's setting the whole stage for Davos.
That's absolutely right. And I think that is really important what you just said. It is a new world order because the Chinese have been trying to create this new world order. And in the prior 4 years under the Biden administration, it did look like there was a new world order run by Asia, run by communist China. But President Trump has taken this back. We talked about Greenland. We talked about Iran. We talked about Venezuela. We talked about the United States with regard to affordability going up into the midterms. I just spoke with the president a few minutes ago, and we also got into what he has been doing in terms of affordability and also free market capitalism. I want you to hear what he said about free market capitalism, so we'll do that coming up. Stay with us.
President Trump still seeking decisive military options against Iran. The U.S. has deployed jet fighters and air defenses to the region. Iran's leadership says they have stopped the demonstrations. But a resistance group within the country says the brutality continues. Retired four-star General Jack Keane joins me now. Iran says the demonstrations are over. We said we would help them. The brutality continues. What happens now?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. I mean, they're still repressing the people. They've got their goons on the street. They brought in thousands of people from other countries, to be specific about Iraqi militia, Pakistani militia, and even Afghanistani militia. They're on the streets. They've got pickup trucks with machine guns on them, and they're repressing the people from actually leaving their homes. So that is really what's stopping future demonstrations, to be sure. And nothing has changed in terms of the brutality and barbarism of this regime. And we all know this, and so do our viewing audience know it. They are who they are. And President Trump has said help is on the way, and he's also got all military options on the table. We do know for a fact that assets are being brought into the region. That's public knowledge. And I'm assuming at some point President Trump is going to fulfill that promise that he made and deliver some kind of a strike against the regime to hold them accountable for what they've done. Stuart, there's talk about the possibility of negotiations with this regime. In my view, that is misguided, to be frank about it. We should not take any step whatsoever that extends the life of this regime. We don't throw them a lifeline by legitimizing them after the horror that they have impacted on their own people. Conservatively, 5,000 dead, more likely closer to 15, maybe even 20,000, 26,000 in prison. And believe me, they will eventually execute thousands of those people in those prisons once the spotlight is off the regime. That is who they are. And I think we know who they are for sure. No lifeline for this regime. Listen, a military option by itself, Stuart, will not guarantee taking a regime down. The only guarantee of changing a regime is boots on the ground and you physically do it. That was Panama in '89, Haiti in '94, Iraq in 2003 and Afghanistan in 2001. Troops on the ground. But a military action, one, holds them accountable for their behavior, puts doubt in the other people's mind, do we want to continue to support the Ayatollah, and also puts them, I think, firmly on a path to eventual collapse. And that is why I think we have to stick to it.
Okay. Another subject. President Trump is set to meet with Ukraine's Zelensky today in Davos. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, they're set to meet Putin today in Moscow. Are we any closer to a deal?
I'll take the administration at face value here. I mean, I don't know the specifics of what's taken place in terms of the deals, and they've done a very good job, frankly, of maintaining operational security about the negotiations, because once it gets into the public arena, it's very difficult to continue adequate negotiations. So good job for them in doing this, because it's been going on about 8 weeks now. Yeah. And here's what I think is really the issue in front of us. We know that Zelensky and the Ukrainian people want peace and are willing to make a deal, and they've made some concessions to make that. We know President Trump wants it, and nobody would be even talking peace here if it wasn't for the president. But there is one person here who has yet to demonstrate to make any concessions to make a deal, and that's Putin. Yeah. His emissaries are telling our negotiators, I'm assuming, yes, we're willing to compromise on this, we're willing to compromise on that. But that isn't Putin. And when we have seen at the end, when we finally get down to doing something with Putin, he has rejected it over and over again. Yep. So at some point here, the ball is being given to Putin, and we'll see if he's willing to actually make some real concessions and get to a peace agreement.
I got one more for you, General. A new report says the Trump administration wants regime change in Cuba by the end of this year. That's in the Wall Street Journal. How will we achieve regime change in Havana? How are we going to do it? Just throttle them, or diplomacy in some way, or some kind of military action? How do we bring them down?
Well, the regime is so fragile, even without what took place with Maduro and the implications it has for the region, that successful operation that the president and his team executed. And they were dependent, frankly, on Venezuela oil and what came from all of that. So that's going to be shut down. So economically, they're going to be squeezed, and many people who look at it and understand the economic situation in Cuba believe it'll be on the verge of collapse once that dries up. So that I believe is the main engine here. And I'm making assumptions that the administration is certainly talking to leaders in Cuba who are not tied to the regime, or if they are tied to the regime, are willing to depart from it, much as we were talking to a lot of Maduro's people while he was still in charge. And where would they stand if he was removed? And we know now that they are standing and working with the Trump administration. So I think both of those things are happening, an eventual economic collapse of Cuba, and also the possibility of a change in the regime leadership, because we're going to get some cooperation from others who are not bona fide communists. Yeah. And this has been sitting there, as we know, going all the way back to the 1950s. When Castro took over the country and Batista fled.
The thing is,
yeah, I think this is progress.
Yeah, everything's
Stuart.
moving forward. It's progress. It is on all fronts, actually. General Jack Keane, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, sir. We'll see you again soon. You got it.
But first, there's this. President Trump is en route to Davos right now after Air Force One was turned back to Washington due to an electrical issue. The president doubled down on his plans to acquire Greenland as world leaders await his speech this morning. Here's the president yesterday.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
What happens to the tariff threat to Greenland if the Supreme Court comes out and rules against you on the tariffs? And
well, I'll have to use something else. I mean,
are
look,
you willing to use force?
you know, take a look at the word license, take a look at other things. I mean, we have other alternatives. But what we're doing now is the best, the strongest, the fastest, the easiest, the least complicated.
Well, this story dominated the conversation yesterday. I was on stage moderating a discussion with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in Davos, and he told me more about the importance and the strategy behind acquiring Greenland. Watch.
How do you justify taking over a country when, in fact, Denmark and Greenland have said they are not interested? Well, Maria, I think the president has a very strong view on Western Hemispheric security and believes that the U.S. should not outsource our national security. He believes that Greenland is essential for the Golden Dome missile shield. The president is worried that if there were an incursion into Greenland, the U.S. would be called upon to defend Greenland. Greenland's becoming more and more attractive for foreign conquest. I tell everyone, sit back, take a deep breath, do not retaliate, do not retaliate. The president will be here tomorrow, and he will get his message across.
Lots of reaction to this. European Union leaders reportedly considering a retaliatory trade bazooka if President Trump follows through in his tariff threats. The president is maintaining he will meet anything Europe does, adding he believes a deal can be worked out in the next few days to make everyone involved happy. Joining me now, right now, on all of that and more here in Davos is the Commerce Secretary of the United States, Howard Lutnick. Secretary Lutnick, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you so much for being here. So what's your take on all of this? I mean, you've got European leaders saying we're going to do an emergency session. We want to talk about this. They're doing this emergency meeting on Sunday. You've got the Danes saying we're going to start selling U.S. treasuries. How worried are you about this reaction?
I mean, the Europeans should try to remember what it was like in April. Right? They got all excited and it was a big thing. And the president wrote letters and made comments because he wanted them at the table. Right? You needed the Europeans at the table. Right? And so now that's what he's done. He said, look, you got to pay attention. You got to focus. You got to be at the table for us. And so that's what's going to happen. And Greenland matters to us for national security.
Tell me about Greenland and the national security implications. Why is it so important in terms of national security?
Well, I'll give you an example that's different than Secretary Besson said yesterday. So the idea is that America has always protected the shipping lanes of the world, right? After World War II, it was America who protected the shipping lanes, right, between Europe and the United States. As the Arctic opens, what do you think is going to happen, right? We need those shipping lanes, and you need to be protected. You can't have Chinese ships or Russian ships while you're coming through, that strait. So America needs to protect it. It's key and part of our national security. The Western Hemisphere is part of our national security, and the president wants to make sure that he's going to protect it. Remember, these trade routes are for Europe just as well. It's not like it's a one-directional thing. These trade routes go both ways.
What would you say if one of our allies said, look, we're going to go in and take over another country, even though the country said we're not interested? I mean, we talk all day and every day about evil action from Putin going into Ukraine. I mean, people are looking at this and saying, how is it possible that the U.S. can acquire another country, even though they're pushing back?
I don't remember Greenland being another country. We're not taking over Denmark. It's just Greenland is in our hemisphere. It's far, far away from Denmark, as we know. And it's 57,000 people, right, who are close to America, and it's important for us to make sure we protect the Western Hemisphere. The strength of America in the Western Hemisphere is vital for the world. When America shines, the world shines. We showed you that throughout 2025. I think the president's going to come and talk about it. He's going to meet with the European leaders. He's going to talk to them. And my guess is they'll work it out. But he wants them at the table. He wants them serious. And I didn't understand why they sent like a couple of dozen military people to Greenland. I mean, it made no sense whatsoever. I mean, they didn't send those couple of dozen people to Ukraine before Russia came in. So, I mean, I think he felt it was they were just being provocative. And so, if you provoke the president, you're going to get a response.
Well, you're working on a lot of trade issues here, and I want to get to Taiwan in a moment. But are you worried that European leaders are now saying, look, well, maybe we won't do the trade deal that we've already been talking about and negotiating for so long?
No, I think the trade deal that Europe did with the United States is very durable. They don't want to change their auto tariffs. They don't want to change their semiconductor tariffs. And they sure as heck don't want to change their pharmaceutical tariffs. So those things are really, really important to Europe. They matter to Europe. That's why we have the deal in the first place. So I think this is going to be a lot of talking, right? A lot of shaking and a lot of rattling. But in the end, the United States is going to speak to Europe, its great friend and ally, and they will work out a resolution that is suitable for Europe and suitable for the President of the United States. He knows what he's doing, and he is on it. I'm going to leave it to the national security team to work it out. But this is important to America, and if it's important to America, it should be darn important to Europe.
Secretary, you led negotiations between the United States and Taiwan on the latest trade deal alongside U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. The deal includes a $250 billion investment from Taiwan into American technology, specifically semiconductors. While the U.S. will bring its reciprocal rate on Taiwanese goods down to 15% or less, Taiwan Semiconductor vowing to invest $165 billion to expand production on American soil, including these 3 new chip plants. I want to talk more about this. Well, we talked a little about it with Jameson Greer, and he's going to be here in the 8 a.m. hour. But give us your sense of the importance of this and what this means for national security, this deal that you just did with Taiwan.
So if you don't make chips, you can't have robots, you can't have drones, you can't take care of yourself. So we need to produce semiconductor chips at home to protect ourselves. And when President Trump walked in for a second term, we were producing no leading edge chips. And our objective is when we leave office, we're going to have 40% market share. So we've got Taiwan, right? 2 blocks of $250 billion, right? Their companies are going to come here, TSMC. We gave them credit for $100 billion. So they've got another 150 to go, right? Plus Taiwan's going to put $250 billion toward their small and mid-sized companies. So we bring the whole supply chain from Taiwan here, try to get up to 40% market share, right? And then for the rest, the CHIPS Act, which was small, we doubled its size. We basically spent no more money and doubled its size. We have Micron building $200 billion in America. So we are going to invest $1 trillion in semiconductors in America, get up to 40% market share, and at least be able to take care of ourselves. God forbid we need to.
Well, this is so important on a national security level. I totally understand that. I mean, you've got China on the march, Russia on the march, and the U.S. is reliant on China for all of these things. You're saying, I mean, how is it possible that President Trump is the first president to actually take action on this?
It seems crazy, right? People
really
slept through everything. I mean, our antibiotics are made in China.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. We can't have an adversary, right, who, God forbid, there's a conflict, that we have to rely upon. It just doesn't make sense. So we need to reshore those things. We need to reshore our pharmaceuticals. So when the president is out talking about pharmaceuticals, he's talking about protecting us. God forbid we need it. We learned it all in COVID, right?
Yeah.
Right? We couldn't even get masks. We couldn't get, hospital gear.
Yeah.
It was outrageous. So now we're paying attention to it. And President Trump's the only president who's got the guts, who's got the stamina, says, look, I'm just going to fix the whole thing for America. And that's why it's great to work in this administration. We are literally fixing the things that make no sense in America. We don't make semiconductors. We don't have pharmaceuticals. I mean, come on. We don't do manufacturing. We need to have jobs in America for our great people. Let's bring those jobs back home.
Yeah, and it's incredible to me that it's taken this long to actually do this, and that the president actually had to threaten tariffs in order to get companies to bring their supply chains here, right?
Well, it makes sense, right? Once upon a time, the president always says, once upon a time there was Intel inside. You remember that? We made all the semiconductors. If the president of the United States at the time said, hey, we're going to put a 50% tariff, you got to build it here, then semiconductors would have never left. Instead, we slept through it. We left this globalization model where you should go find the cheapest labor and move to the cheapest labor. And what happened? It all left America. It gutted the industrial base of America. And now we need to bring that home. We need to create those jobs at home. We need to take care of American workers first. And that's what we're all about. We're focusing on American workers. I mean, think about it. What model would have Ford stock up 40%, General Motors up 60%, except when you put Donald Trump in the Oval Office and he says, I'm going to take care of my domestic auto industry. The UAW is on side. Sean Fain, who runs the UAW, he actually called me and he said, I can't believe I'm calling a Republican Secretary of Commerce to say, thank God for you guys. You guys care about the American worker.
Secretary, you just met with the CEO of Intel. Tell us about that. Lip Bouton at the White House just 4 months after the government took a 10% stake in the company. You say that the partnership was already delivering tens of billions in value for the American people. The administration has similar stakes in MP Materials, Lithium Americas, U.S. Steel, and others. You have to explain this to me a little, because you're a capitalist. The president is a capitalist. You talk about free market capitalism all the time. And when I interviewed the president for the first time when he came back, second term, it was right after the inauguration, I said to him, Mr. President, what do you want this economy to look like in 4 years? He said, I want the private enterprise to rule the day. How is taking a stake in Intel, MP, telling defense companies not to pay dividends? How's that free market capitalism?
Okay, so let's go over Intel for a moment, right? So I walk in the door. The Biden administration had given GIVEN $10 billion to Intel to build semiconductors in America, which they were already doing. So what I call that is called shareholder Christmas. Right? There's a $100 billion company. They just get $10 billion from the government, and they're not going to build any more semiconductors. So we said, look, we're going to cancel that contract, and I want the $10 billion back. I don't want to give you the $10 billion because that's just not going to work for us. And so we negotiated, and we said, okay, you can keep the money that was already signed,
That's
sealed,
true,
and
yeah.
delivered,
Okay, good point,
and you
yeah.
give us 10% of the equity in the company, right? And now we can help them because we want Intel to be successful in America. It matters to us that we build semiconductors in America. And what's happened? The stock's up 35, 40% since then, right? But remember, the $10 billion was already out the door at zero. So we're up like $30 billion in the United States. I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking care of the American taxpayer once in a while. Everything doesn't have to be a giveaway. So the concept of, isn't this free market? I think this is the definition of free market. Giving away taxpayer money, it just doesn't work for me.
Well, what kind of a shareholder is the government going to be? Are you going to be an activist shareholder? You're going to tell Intel how to spend its money? You're going to tell Intel what to do?
No, but what we do is by us being there and nodding behind them, they know that it's not going anywhere. So you can invest in Intel. You can try. So they, as Lip-Bu just said, right? He said his 18A is doing well and his 14A is doing well. That's 1.8 nanometer. It's basically the most advanced chip ever made in America, and he's doing it successfully. And that's sort of what we want, right? What does America want? We want leading edge chips made in America. So God forbid if we need them for whether it's F-35s or drones or robots, we're making them here so we can protect ourselves.
And Secretary, speaking of drones, are we still buying drones from DJI, a Chinese drone maker? I mean, we still have those drones in our arsenal.
So these things are going to end, right? Drones made in China and robots made in China. It's our view. We're doing a study, right? That's called a 232. We analyze the market, we analyze the study, and then when that is done, we'll come out, we'll recommend to the president what policies and what procedures he can take, and then he'll decide how he wants to do it.
Okay. Speaking of 232, is that an alternative should the Supreme Court go against you? We're waiting on the Supreme Court decision on whether or not President Trump can use tariffs in an emergency. What are you expecting? When are we expecting to get this news from the Supreme Court? And can you come up with an alternative to actually raise that kind of hundreds of billions of dollars in tariff revenue that you've already been able to?
So I was in the courtroom for the Supreme Court argument, and we are going to win the case, right? I listened to the case. We are going to win. It felt really good when I left. When I left, I called the president. I said, you're going to win this case. Wow. So I was there. I listened to the whole thing. So I am pretty confident. But
there were 5 justices that were skeptical about President Trump using it as an emergency.
I think they were skeptical to the other side, to us first. Remember, we went first. So they were very skeptical of us. Right. Right? But then, and then all the newspapers wrote everything and everybody wrote everything. And then they went. And they were more skeptical of the other side. So when I left, I felt good about myself. And each of the justices asked really interesting questions, right? And they said, I'll give you an example. One of the questions was, so let me get this straight. You're saying the president of the United States of America can cut off trade with a country. He can cut it off for zero, but he can't charge them a tariff? So he can't do something less? He said, imagine... this was Brett Kavanaugh. He goes, imagine the Oval Office conversation. Mr. President, we've got a problem with this adversary. And he says, and they say, you can cut him off. He goes, no, I don't want to cut him off. Let's just put a tariff on them. Oh, you're not allowed, sir. That just doesn't make any sense. And that was a Supreme Court justice asking the question. So I think that's what made me feel good, right? There's examples of why we felt good. So I think he's going to win. But Jamieson Greer and I, together with our powers, we can help the president execute whatever plan he wants. We got him here. I think we're going to stay here. But if anything changed, the two of us will work together. We have enough power. We will make it work for the president of the United States. And all of our trading partners know tariffs are going nowhere. But I think we win with the Supreme Court.
So even if you don't, you think you can use different sections like Section 232 and 301 or whatever else to raise that kind of money?
Well, as the Supreme Court justices said, if you overturn this, this is going to be one mess. Wow, would it be a mess? And I just don't see them taking the power away from the only person elected by the full the United States of America. He should run foreign policy. Let the president run foreign policy. I mean, look what an amazing job he's done. GDP up 4.3%, right? Imports way down. Exports way up. Trade deficit way down. GDP up and our deficit down. I mean, these are all win, 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 win. You got to leave the president with that power.
What would be your expectation for economic growth this quarter, first quarter?
So I think this quarter, the first quarter of 2026, the United States of America's $30 trillion economy will exceed 5% growth.
Wow, 5%.
Exceed 5%. And if we get a new Fed chair, which we'll get this summer, and they cut rates, which they should, because why is the greatest credit in the world paying the highest rates? You saw the 10-year, right? We just looked at it. 4.25. We are 200 basis points higher than anybody else in the world, and we're the best credit. Usually you would say, no, the best credit pays the lowest rate, not the highest rate. If they cut that rate, you're going to see the end of 2026. You're going to see 6% growth from the United States of America. Wow. And I tell you what, that fixes a whole lot of stuff, and that's why you put Donald Trump in the Oval Office.
Quite a prediction. Real quick before you go, President Trump has been talking about this $19 trillion that he has actually lured to invest into America. When you first came in and you sat down, you were talking about other money that you've been able to raise from various investors and companies. What is that number?
Okay, so Japan gave us $550 billion, and we're focused on building power, right? We all know we need these data centers in America. We're going to build power, but we're going to do it in two ways. Not only are we going to build data centers, but we're going to take a piece of that power, and we're going to give it to the grid, and we're going to drive down the price of energy for Americans. And our objective is to drive it down 10% so that Americans have the benefit of the power we're going to build. The Koreans gave us $200 billion, so that's $750 between the two of them. Then the Koreans gave us another $150 billion to do shipbuilding. Add that to Taiwan's $500 billion, and the Commerce Department, which set all these up, is one busy place investing that money for the betterment of America, and that's on top of what Donald Trump talks about.
Secretary, I think you're having a ball in this new job.
My objective as a member of this cabinet is to have the best time, right? I want to be the cabinet member who has the best time working for Donald Trump.
The American people will hopefully have the best time as well. Secretary, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Howard Letnick joining us. We'll be right back. You're watching Mornings with Maria, live from the World Economic Forum.
There are geostrategic implications for everything that's happening longer term here. If you think about Iran and Venezuela, their illicit oil is being purchased primarily by China. That illicit oil is now coming under U.S. control. That's going to have a major impact on China. You think about China competing against us with rare earth minerals. We're going to control the flow of oil. It's not about producing the oil as much as it is about controlling it. And with oil under control, Venezuelan oil under American control, I think we see what's happening in Iran. There is a change underway right now. And if you think about the movements in Greenland, again, long-term geostrategic implications there. China, the East China Sea, the South China Sea, again, the boats, the harassment that's going on. President Trump has re-engaged with Japan in a way that shows even greater strength. I was the ambassador to Japan back when Prime Minister Abe was in office. I now see Prime Minister Takaichi and President Trump taking the relationship even further. China hates this.
Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty is speaking with Maria on Sunday about China's new strategies to undermine America's influence in the West. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney meeting Xi Jinping last week in Beijing, signing a, quote, new strategic partnership deal to lower tariffs on Chinese electric vehicle imports and canola oil from Canada, among other ag products. This agreement shows Canada would rather mend a once-strained trade relationship with China instead of side with the United States on national security. Here's Mark Carney.
Our relationship, the one comparison I will give you with the United States, our relationship, this is no insight, is much more multifaceted, much deeper, much broader than it is with China. But yes, in terms of the way that our relationship has progressed in recent months with China, it is more predictable, and you see results coming from that.
Carney also says that Ottawa and China are in lockstep against President Trump's desire to acquire Greenland. I want to bring in Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, another thing that Carney said over the weekend is that Canada's longstanding close economic relationship with the U.S. is over.
Yes, and that's really an important point. President Trump gets a lot of credit for raising national security issues and concerns that we have with Canada, and his predecessors let him slide. But the important thing is to solve those problems, not to make them worse. And right now, relations between Ottawa and Washington are going in the wrong direction. And this is important because although there are concerns about Greenland, we've got greater concerns about Canada, which is much closer. We have that long, undefended border. So this is important for President Trump to actually start to kiss and make up with Carney, because at this point, our security has been endangered by the problems with Ottawa moving closer to China.
Yeah, Liz Peek is here. She's got a question for you.
Good morning, Gordon. The president, in his long post about his rationale for forcing a deal with Greenland, talked about the Golden Dome and the essential nature, that it's essential to have Greenland part of that Golden Dome and Canada. Is that your understanding, that the Golden Dome project that he is very keen on, and I think is incredibly important for the security of the United States, requires not only, that covers not only Canada, but requires Greenland? Do you agree with that?
Well, certainly, because you can't protect the United States from missiles coming over the Arctic unless you have facilities and radars in Canada and in Greenland. This is just essential. It's geography. The question, though, is do you actually need to annex Greenland to do that? And of course, no, because Greenland is a part of Denmark. Denmark is a NATO member, and we have cooperated with Denmark on Greenland for decades, and we can continue to do so even if Greenland remains a part of Denmark. The point here, though, is going to be that essentially we do need close cooperation in the Arctic, because China and Russia have been increasing their military activities in the region, and that threatens Greenland, Denmark, Canada, and the United States. So we need to work together.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because, look, the Russians have been using that Arctic region, the waters there, for their submarines and their ships for years. And you know, the United States used to have tens of thousands of troops in Greenland, but we reduced that over the years. If you're Canada, are you concerned about these incursions? And does it make more sense to play nice, if you will, with China or even Russia, because you're worried about your own border?
Well, yes, because we know that the Chinese in 2024, for the first time, sent a research submarine under the Arctic ice cap, which really is a prelude to the Chinese sending a submarine with ballistic missiles there. Also, we have seen the Chinese and Russians cooperate on military drills, with Chinese bombers taking off from Russian bases in the Arctic. So Canada right now is, vulnerable, because it has that long border in the Arctic, and it's got very few in the way of defense facilities there. And by the way, this is also a problem for the United States, because despite all of the Chinese and Russian naval activity in the Arctic, we do not have a naval base in Alaska, which is our Arctic frontier. So, it's not only Denmark that went to sleep on Greenland, and the Danes have admitted that, but it's also the Canadians and the Americans. We have all neglected the Arctic, and the Chinese and Russians are taking advantage of that.
Right, and we've got a lot of our ships right now are actually still concentrated in the Caribbean and off the coast of Venezuela. So there's that asset question mark as well. That's played into the Iran story. We did sign, the U.S. did a new deal with Taiwan. So it's a new trade deal. It did lower American tariffs on Taiwanese goods to 15% in exchange for $250 billion of investment into American technology. That's more than $165 billion from Taiwan Semiconductor in U.S.-based chip manufacturing. Now, China condemns this. They say they firmly oppose the agreement. They still claim that Taiwan is their territory. The House China Select Committee did pass a funding bill last week, which secures over $2 billion for Taiwan's defense against China, Gordon. I want to get your thoughts on this, because the other thing that Taiwan Semiconductor is, they're going to be, they've been buying more land, and they've been expanding in Arizona. So they actually are, committing and making the strides to build these facilities in the United States. That's important.
That's absolutely critical, because we have offshored our ability to make microchips, and we need to bring that back into the U.S. And TSMC, with its 6 or so planned fabs in the Phoenix area, they're absolutely critical to that. And when you look at that $250 billion commitment, about half of it is TSMC. So this is going to be important going forward. You know, anything that brings Taiwan and the U.S. closer together, that's a really good thing because that spells deterrence. And that means peace and stability in the East Asian region.
Yeah, no, and it also means a lot of U.S. jobs, in particular for that region, which, again, is important. Gordon Chang, thank you so much for being here. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
All right, I always appreciate your perspective. We're going to be right back, everybody.
Well, I'm not going to have to pay anything. We're going to have total access to Greenland. We're going to have all military access that we want. We're going to be able to put what we need on Greenland because we want it. We're talking about national security and international security. So we're going to not have to pay anything other than the fact that we are building the Golden Dome. And the Golden Dome is going to be something that's going to be very amazing.
Don't say we didn't tell you. We didn't warn you? Yeah, we did. If you were watching this show, you would know the tariffs were never the point. It was all about the deal, the art of it. President Trump did what he does, apply pressure, force movement, then cut a deal. And if these terms don't hold up, it's a good one. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Dagan McDowell, along with my co-hosts, Taylor Riggs, Brian Bremberg, Jackie DeAngelis. And with us this hour, before his special, which is next week, before his show 2 hours from now, Making Money host, Charles Payne.
It's good to be here.
Always, sir. The President of the United States suspending the February 1st European tariffs following a breakthrough on Greenland. After days of panicked headlines about trade wars, market meltdowns, it turns out the tariff threat was just leverage. And once NATO members came to the table, Trump backed off, just like he said he would. Wall Street loves it. Stocks up, yields on our debt down, oil sliding, America gets full access military positioning, Arctic security, the Western Hemisphere, the Monroe Doctrine in place, expanding. We didn't even write a check. Europe gets stability, NATO gets coordination, the United States gets strategic access to one of the most critical regions on planet Earth, rich in minerals and vital for defense against Russia and China. This wasn't chaos, it was negotiation. If you panicked, if your knickers were in a knot, you lost money. Let's call it a learning experience. I don't think our viewers would be like that, but I never do this online, but someone on another show on our sister network was saying yesterday at the end of the day, this is the art of the deal. And I was like, I said that on Monday, like before the market fell out of bed. But Charles, how do you see this playing out?
It's the old Lucy and Charlie Brown thing, right? And I think it's people who are just have Trump derangement syndrome to such a embedded degree are the ones who truly fall for this every time. And then when it turns out an amazing deal has been made, they say, well, it was taco trade. Trump panicked. He blinked. The market was down 2% and he blinked. No, you're just a fool. You know, you're just not paying attention. You haven't been paying attention, and you won't. You won't, because you're rooting against all of this and all of us. And again, this is just absolutely phenomenal. The guy, I think really the key character, central figure here who really should get a lot of props is the guy in charge of NATO, the Secretary General.
Yep.
This dude, he got it. He went out there in the panel and said, listen, you guys get pissed at me if you want. Trump, he pushed us in the right direction, right? We were asleep. If you read 10 years ago, I remember one of my first meetings with my show team, and we talked about climate change, and I said, it's going to be great in so many ways. You have all this millions and millions of acres of land, fertile land that will, the ice will move away. Won't be able to feed the planet. You'll also have these new trade routes and Arctic routes, but there's going to be a battle for them. So smart people knew years ago that something had to be done, but Europe didn't do anything about this. The Danes didn't do anything about it. They just slept as Russia and China, the dragon bear, continue to position. Right. And you know what? Trump came to the rescue. So I applaud the president of Finland saying, hey, we could have done this or we can do it. Listen, champ, You guys produce paper and pulp. Give me a break, all right? You know, I dig you, but you really needed our help. Okay, you can act like you didn't. That's fine. Go on the dais and sit on the couch and tell everyone that we didn't need America. But Trump came to the rescue again, and this is a great win-win for everyone.
You mentioned Mark Rutte, who's the head of NATO, but before, I just wanted to point this out. I've probably said this before, but he was the Prime Minister of the Netherlands for about 14 years, and he was the longest serving Dutch Prime Minister, and it was because he was able to work with competing factions and bring all of these somewhat disparate opponents together and create coalitions over that period. So he's been a huge asset to not our national interest, but our global interest.
I mean, if it was up to Macron and these other people, give me a break, you know. And Carney, if it was up to them, they'd just be. And what about the old the old school diplomatic craft? They get together in these lavish 5-star hotels, meet for 4 or 5 days, and agree to do it again 6 months later. And next thing you know, 20 years has gone by.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make the point on how fast he did it. We were talking about this on the show, Dagan, as you mentioned. If you were watching our show, we kind of set the stage for you. After the show, I go upstairs, I change. By the time I get my bag, someone had given me a Chipotle gift card, and I decided I wanted to go get a burrito bowl. So by the time I got there, stood online and got my burrito bowl, I looked down at the phone, and Trump has a deal on Greenland. I mean, that's how fast he gets it done. And who was panicking? The ones that were panicking were on the left. They know the art of the deal, but even after, you know, his first term and now he started his second term, they refuse to acknowledge it. They refuse to see it. They put the panic out there because that's part of their narrative. And then when he gets the deal done, they refuse to give him credit too. And we'll talk about Gavin Newsom, for example, poking holes in it. But what's amazing to me is that Davos used to sort of be this place that world leaders and business people would go, and they would pontificate on things, the economy, climate change, globalism. But it was sort of this like think tank space. This president turned it into a G7. He went there, he talked to who he needed to talk to, he made deals, he did his interviews, he announced some policy, and he left. This was the most extraordinary Davos I think I have ever seen.
So I hear your taco trade, and I raised you a Happy Meal. How about that?
Sounds good.
This was not a taco trade. This was a Happy Meal.
Right.
If you thought it was a taco trade, you missed out and you were wrong. It's shaping up, according to some reports, to be a market positive, as we see today, because it, guess what, improves U.S. national security and gives us access to rare earths and minerals and denies our competitors access, oh yes, also all the way down to Venezuela. So one of my favorite lines in a note I read this morning is that if you've been trying to judge Trump based on success or failure, a binary outcome of this taco trade, you got it wrong. This was never a judge on if we get sovereignty or if we offend Europe. That was the wrong way to be viewing at it. We have two goals as released in November 2025 in Trump's national security report. Secure the Western Hemisphere and get access to rare earths and minerals. This appears on all fronts to look like maybe we accomplished both of those things. My also favorite line is the EU, when we talk about just how slow they are, they've always talked, but there's no reality. The reality is that EU, Carney, they are not and were never ready to offer a credible alternative to what Trump was pitching. So he came in and he was able to do it. So I just sum it up as market's positive because it looks like we don't have to spend trillions of dollars buying the thing. But if you sort of get a perpetual lease, maybe, we'll see how details look. You get to increase national security, secure Western Hemisphere, all things that should not be a surprise to people, and the markets are happy.
As you know, I don't sleep. So I was doing the inflation adjustment on if Harry Truman had been able to buy Greenland in 1946. The United States would have paid in today's dollars only $1.5 billion for it. But we offered to buy it in gold. The gold, even though under Bretton Woods it was a fixed price because it was pegged to the dollar back then, it would be worth, if Greenland, if Denmark had sat on the gold, it would be worth $12.5 billion. I know Charles has probably run those numbers.
Even even with that in mind, and you mentioned it didn't cost us anything, they should have jumped in there immediately, Denmark, right, and said, okay, because the first number that was thrown out, I don't know if it was a trial balloon or not, was $700 billion.
Right. A lot of money.
So $140 billion covers all of their debt. And, another couple $100 billion covers their entire GDP. So even if they would have said, hey, we'll take $500 billion, it would have been a hell of a deal for them. And if you imagine if you lived in Greenland and said, okay, we would love to have the same status as Guam and Puerto Rico, to be U.S. citizens, but not have to pay taxes, but can get all of the benefits of U.S. citizens. Oh, my goodness. Are you nuts? They should have leaped on the initial offer.
They missed out on that one. You should eat a big Happy Meal right before you go to bed, and it'll just calm you down, and you'll sleep like a baby right through
I don't
the night.
think that's a good idea.
Big old Happy Meal. Okay.
It's playing with the toys that keeps you up.
That's
though.
right. That's the problem with Dagan. Okay, now, Taylor, I want to disagree with you a little bit. I think actually this deal was an unhappy meal.
Oh, what?
But that's good. No, listen. Sometimes in life, you measure success by the people you make unhappy. President Trump made a lot of people in Europe unhappy, and they're exactly the right people, because a lot of NATO are like renters who don't pay their rent, and they never mow the grass even though they said they would. Okay? And when you have people like that, you don't want to make them happy. You want to shape them up. So Trump says, you got to start paying rent. And if you're not going to mow the grass, that's fine. But that means I get to come over whenever I want with my riding lawnmower, and I'm going to take care of it. Do you see that?
Right.
That's what Trump did here. He made the right people unhappy, and he proved that the wrong people didn't understand the deal they had, and they missed an opportunity for it. And that's why America hired Trump, to do exactly that, to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted in Europe, who for decades have blown their strategic position because they like to feel good about hanging out in places like Davos.
I think before we go, and I'll talk about it as the show goes on, one of the most important voices at Davos was Chris Wright, our energy secretary. That was the first time he'd ever been at Davos. And he sat down with the head of Occidental Petroleum. Mm-hmm. And he talked about, and our arms are wide open to Europe and our allies. And he reiterated what President Trump has said, but we want to provide peace and prosperity. And the path to that is through energy and reversing the multi-trillion-dollar malinvestment on green energy and in pursuit of climate change. And one thing that Wright did say was that in just, say, 12 to 24 months, because of Norway and the United States, Europe will be completely independent from Russian natural gas. And that is just part of the energy independence message from Chris Wright, but just more energy is better. Mm-hmm. And I will get into that, because he talked about Gavin Newsom and California, because Occidental left California. He turned tail and ran for the hills. President Trump is set to shake things up at the World Economic Forum, that meeting of useless globalists in Davos, Switzerland this week. The president will be there, and he will be bringing the largest U.S. delegation ever, flooding the zone. And President Trump's expected to challenge the global order and push his America First policies. It's on the heels of fresh tariff threats over Greenland. The White House says Europe needs to trust America's leadership.
And if you go back and look that as we've negotiated these great deals, both for the U.S. and for Europe, then their economies have boomed, their stock markets have boomed. It's been amongst the better years ever for them, because basically they see that the U.S. right now is once again the shining city on the hill, that we're the engine of global growth. And President Trump has accomplished that really in just 1 year.
I do love the appearance of, it's not just President Trump, it's like, we're bringing everybody. We're bringing the biggest delegation.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, that means you can talk.
I know. Thank you for letting me talk.
The one thing I want to be clear about is that I admire President Trump's intelligence around business, around money, around the world economy. I hope that we show up with that mindset to be the most intelligent in the room, but not always the most abrasive. And I think we need to maybe just temper it just a little to try to get something more accomplished and not be everybody's enemy all the time.
But we're not Europe's enemy.
Well, we are if we
that,
start levying tariffs against them all the time.
But I think that genuflecting to the world and nations that hate us was the Biden doctrine, and we saw that got us nowhere. Actually,
that's why we're all happy he's
America first to America on her ass.
That's right.
In about 6 weeks.
But that's why we're happy with what we have now. We just need to make sure that we get as much momentum as we can so we don't lose that.
You know, temperamentally, I'm kind of with you. Like in my own life, I don't like to walk into a space and shake it up a lot. I'm not that kind of person. You know, I like to be friends more than adversaries. That's also why I'm not a very good politician, and probably wouldn't be a very good world leader on the world stage, because I don't like this. You've got a status quo in Europe and globally that I think has become very disadvantageous to the United States.
I agree.
Like not just a little bit, but I think profoundly disadvantageous, because powers around the globe who don't care about niceties have been making a lot of really consequential moves over many years. And I think
to our peril.
To our peril.
Yeah.
China, Russia, Iran, others. Okay. I think President Trump, because of his business experience, is very attuned to situations where the leverage has been changed fundamentally against his favor. I think he's just very good at seeing that. It's big picture kind of stuff. And that's why I think, you know, we talked about the timing of Greenland. I think that's why he thinks the time is now, because he looks around and says, these people kind of have us surrounded, and I don't want to be surrounded. I want to play from a position of strength, and so I'm just going to move. Venezuela was not playing nice in Venezuela. He was playing global realities. He's not playing nice with Panama Canal. He's playing global realities. Not playing nice with Iran. He's playing global realities. Greenland, global realities. So I think he walks into Davos. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I don't think it's going to be nice. But I do think it's going to be mostly true. And mostly true to me is way more important than happy at this stage vis-a-vis Europe.
I agree with you.
And I'll add to that and say I think he's going to walk in there and dominate. We are coming up on his year anniversary in office, and he's going to talk about, you know, all of the things that he's accomplished in foreign policy, in the economy, in taking something that was really in bad shape under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and being able to turn that around in a real way. And he's done that. So I think he goes in there and just kind of tells people where to go. He's also not afraid to say this establishment and the way you talk here and the way you've treated this is all very antiquated. You come and you do the same thing year after year. It's time to shake it up a little bit, and that's what he does. You know, we talk about women breaking glass ceilings, but in his own way, he busts up a lot of ceilings because everybody else, whether it's the Europeans or it's the Democrats or it's people who don't want to take it on because they're lazy and because it's too much of an undertaking and because they don't want to risk themselves, their reputation, re-election, et cetera.
But Besant's identification of how those other economies have flourished in collaboration, I think, is a more persuasive argument to say, listen, these other countries have allowed us to be exploited, you to be exploited. Let me show you a page out of my handbook, and let's see your economies flourish. I want the best for you as much as I want the best for me, as long as I'm first. Yeah. And I'm fine with that. But I think there's a way to actually show people how they can prosper at the same time.
Well, I think win-win is
not
good.
at our expense.
I agree with you. Win-win is an important case to make, but it sits right on top of the bigger cases, which is we can't afford to lose. Like, let's find win-wins, but let's be clear. If we lose, it's a permanent loss. That's right. Right? And so I think both have to be true here.
Two thoughts when we're talking about Hasid on the economy. Not that we care, but the IMF upgrades global GDP growth up to 3.3% from 3.1%. So on that thing, no, things look good. The economy is growing. For advanced economies, higher growth. For U.S. growth, higher growth. We've talked about Atlanta Fed GDP still 5.3% for Q4, high growth. But I agree with sort of everything we've hinted at is the messaging. I think we like the message. It's just sort of how we're messaging it. Where I think, Brian, to your point, it's right that we're sort of acting like our hair is on fire. We're acting with extreme urgency, because you could argue that with Greenland or with Venezuela or with Iran last summer, there is urgency. The urgency is now. How we're messaging that could be a little bit better. And I think what I am afraid of is some of the critics, and you guys have heard me talk a lot about this. I have a lot of friends on the left, and their critics are, this gives them fodder. I think instead of getting on board with what he's doing, taking out Maduro, thinking about Greenland, thinking about putting the U.S. first so that we don't have to come in later and rescue everyone else. The way that it goes about it sometimes gives them fodder, and I don't want that to happen, because I don't want that to happen in the midterms, because I want us to have a longer leeway to be able to get things done.
I hear you, and I hear the criticism that is made of President Trump and how he does it, but I also think that the left drinks its own, like, sort of fake news Kool-Aid, and this brings me to some of the polls that are saying, you know, his approval ratings are tanking. People who voted for him think he's done a horrible job on the economy. That actually isn't true.
Not true at all.
It is not true at all. Polls, it depends who you're talking to and the subset of people that you're asking. And these polls are not accurate. I think most people think that this brashness is exactly what they voted for. This, you know, go in and break things and get it done, because we were falling into last place and we need to be in first place. And at least you can tell whether it works or doesn't work. That's what he's trying to do.
Well, all of these Europeans, I will take brashness in your face and getting things done for America and, quite frankly, our allies all day long than the niceties of these globalists and these Europeans. They'll look you straight in the eye and lie to you and then stab you in the back as soon as you turn around to leave the room. And if you look at, I can never get away from our energy policy and what's gone on in the United States just in the last year, because that puts us on such an incredible footing now that we, you know, most of the majority of the oil and energy is produced in the Western Hemisphere because of Venezuela is now within our sphere. We dominate world oil production. Oil production, 20% of global oil production is now in the U.S., and most of that increase is going toward exports. Europe needs us because they have misallocated vast amounts of money on green energy and gotten nothing except higher energy prices. So they can talk all day long about, oh, they don't like the way Trump speaks. But everything that he does, you have to always look beyond the way he expresses himself and even go several steps into what his end goal is. The Federal Reserve here at home is one example. The lower rates. What he actually is doing is, because 60% of our debt is short-term, rolls over less than 1 year, lower rates, he's reducing our debt to GDP.
It's a refi setup.
Right. He's reducing the debt, our debt burden, because you lower interest rates and then you keep inflation slightly elevated, you're inflating away the debt. And that's exactly what he's doing. And after he leaves office, we're going to look at it and say, oh my, where'd the debt go? Or at least a large chunk of it. And so nobody ever talks about that. They talk about, oh, he's attacking Jay Powell, as if Jay Powell is the second coming of
something.
Greenspan, even though he was kind of a
I'm
hack,
conflicted by the messaging, even myself, because if we were running this like a business in peril, which is what most Americans voted to have this right-sized, part of it is you would want people to perform. You would want to do everything. You would not democratize all the ideas. You would be very brash, to Dagan's point, about how you would approach it. I think the difference for me, maybe more than anything else, is you got to celebrate the wins. What's missing is when Doge was established over a year ago, you knew that you were going to make good business decisions and you were going to rip costs out. And that ripping the costs out thing has left the room. And if you're running a business in peril, you have to find the right people, get rid of the bad actors, deal with your competition, and rip costs out at the same time. If we can get that messaging back in, then the brashness actually lands because it feels like it's got purpose, which is I need us to be cash flow positive, which just means I need the debt to go away or I need the debt to go down. I need things to be right. And if you don't like my messaging, then don't work here. And I know we say it's not a company, but people voted for fiscal responsibility. And they need that other half.
You know what the case is, real quick, the difference, and I agree with you, they voted for that. But when you become president, you get in the seat and you assess what's happens, since you were last there in the case of Trump or maybe ever. You sit there and you realize all those things, and you also realize Russia's got missiles pointed to you that can fly right over the Arctic and kill you. And when that happens, you think, well, cash flow is good and getting the right people on the bus is good, but I got to do something about the missiles now. And I just think that reality changes the way you have to behave and message and where your focus is. You don't ask for that reality, but it's what you get when you become president of the United States. And I think that's what he's got right now when it comes to Greenland.
Both things can be true, though. You can do both things at the same time.
They can, but I think the missiles weigh heavier on your mind.
Sure.
Well, he's over-asking. Art of the deal.
Yeah.
He's over-asking.
Yeah.
And he's going to get what he wants, which is a giant military base. Taylor.
Holy smokes. You know what I want? Silver and gold. Silver is up 25% this year alone, and we are only 19 days in. This has been, I hate to use this analogy, to the moon, you guys. Diamond hands. All of this has been pretty much a straight line up. Now, when we talk about gold, when we talk about silver, silver, as we know, is a key input into EVs, into some of the other components here that we're working on sort of refactoring. But it has been phenomenal, the rise of all of this. Want to know if you guys have any quick comments, if this is just a dollar debasement? Is this we like gold because we're worried about Greenland? Is this we just like commodities? Marcus, what do you think?
It's a global currency, and people, like, when they have uneasiness, they're going to get attracted to a global currency they know they can count on.
It's a mania. It's a bubble. There's no explanation for speculation.
Well, the three kings didn't think so. I mean, they were trading with gold.
And silver and myrrh.
That's right.
Right. I think that we're a more advanced economy than that.
Maybe.
Maybe not.
Sometimes.
Gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Oh, I thought it was
the
silver.
frankincense
Okay.
in there. You
Okay.
can't forget
Silver is good,
Sorry.
too. Just throw it in
Thank
there.
you.
It's fine.
Comment now from Liz Peek. What do you got to say?
Yeah, it was the greatest hits speech for sure. It went all over the place, including Somalis and Venezuela and everything else. But the bottom line, I think, is this. And certainly in the beginning of the speech, he did this very effectively, arguing the case for why Europe is underperforming the United States and has for 2 or 3 decades. And I think what's interesting to me and has over watching Trump over these last several years, Europe now knows this. They actually buy his argument that lower taxes, lower regulation, getting rid of the Green New Deal, et cetera, is actually benefiting the United States and it would benefit Europe. And in fact, globalist institutions like the IMF make that case also. So I think he has a receptive audience. I mean, certainly the speech was full of digs at one country or another. He really went after Switzerland, which, since they are the host of this forum, was a little bit of an interesting take. But I think certainly what the market's responding to is, yes, backing off the idea that we're going to go in and invade Greenland. And I thought, actually, it made an interesting case for why we, to some degree, have a right to Greenland, having rescued Europe and Denmark from the Nazis. and then having basically sovereignty over Greenland and giving it back. So, I mean, it's sort of an interesting, I hadn't heard him really go there before. I think the more he makes the case for Greenland, which, by the way, is a very easy case to make, because if you look at a map of where Russian missile installations are, boy, is Greenland in the way of the United States and provides a buffer zone. So I thought it was effective. I'm sad he went on so long and sort of meandered, but that's what he does.
But thank you very much for sitting with us throughout
that's all right. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have watched the whole thing, so that's probably a good thing,
Great to have you with us.
Welcome back. Well, the U.S.-Gaza ceasefire plan entering phase 2. The White House announcing new governance, security, and reconstruction mechanisms, along with the group leading the U.S.-Gaza ceasefire plan. That includes 2 of President Trump's closest confidants, a former British prime minister, an American general, and other senior Middle Eastern officials. President Trump inviting a slew of world leaders to join the Board of Peace for Gaza. Fox can confirm that the president wants that board signing ceremony to happen Thursday here in Davos. Meanwhile, President Trump says it's time for new leadership in Iran, following the regime's deadly crackdown on protesters in Tehran. The president weighing military options as Iranian officials reveal upwards of 5,000 verified deaths in the protests. Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Qatar all lobbying the Trump administration not to strike Iran, but there are reports of up to 20,000 people dead as the regime cracks down on dissent. Joining me now is the Minister of Tourism for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Excellency Ahmed Al-Khatib. Your Excellency, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And I know Saudi Arabia has a big contingency here in Davos. You said 8 ministers are here.
Yep.
And I want to get your take first before we go into tourism and prosperity that you're seeing. And I know that you've worked hard on this tourism move for Saudi Arabia. What is your reaction to what has taken place in Iran?
Tourism is one of as you know, one of 2030 vision main pillars, because Saudi Arabia has used to focus on energy, oil, and other sources. And with Vision 2030, we introduced new sectors aiming to diversify our economy and make it more resilient. And Saudi Arabia is located in the Middle East, where Iran is not too far, but however, we are seeing a growth in people visiting Saudi Arabia for different purposes, whether for religious purpose or for business or for sport or leisure, and the numbers confirmed in 2025, we received more than 30 million people from outside to Saudi Arabia.
From outside, including Iran?
Including Iran for different purposes. But definitely the number is growing, and the tourism industry is contributing to the diversification of our economy and for job creation, especially for women. 47% of the workforce, of the 1 million workforce in tourism are women, and this is very important for us.
It sure is very important for women everywhere to hear that. And I recognize that you have to be very careful and guarded on what you may say about Iran, because it's not your role. You're dealing with tourism. But is there any reaction to all of the dissent that we saw on the streets of Iran, that they want an end to the brutal regime of Khomeini?
Actually, our Minister of Foreign Affairs is here, and I can refer this question to him. However, Saudi Arabia, have been very clear about its position, and we've been very transparent about Saudi Arabia regional position, and the relationship with the United States have been always a very strategic, long-term, important to both countries. We have seen President Trump a very successful visit to Riyadh, and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince visit to Washington also, and therefore we continue our very successful and strategic relationship at all levels, whether political or economical. And we are from an economy point of view, the trade between the two countries or the tourism between the two countries have been growing.
Well, I mean, I think you make a really good point. Do you think that President Trump's trip to the Middle East and the very, very special time and reception that he received from His Royal Highness and your colleagues helped him in terms of support for other regions around Iran? Do you think that helped President Trump in terms of his tough stance against Khomeini?
I think Saudi Arabia have been
ally to the U.S. And with President Trump, we're seeing strong ties and relationship between the two countries. And the U.S. administration and President Trump believe in what Saudi Arabia is taking in order to, create peace in the Middle East. And you have seen what Saudi Arabia is doing for example, in Syria and the Middle East prosperity. Because for me, as a person in charge of one of the economical sector, stability and peace are fundamental to drive economies.
Very, very important, of course. Okay, let me zero in on tourism. What is driving this increase in tourism? And are you telling us that you're expected to see the third highest growth rate among G20 countries, according to the IMF, 4.5% this year in terms of growth? Is tourism part of that? And what is the catalyst for this tourism spike that you're referring to?
It's exploring and unlocking the tremendous values that the country has, and one of them is the tourism sector. We have a big country. It's the biggest economy in the Middle East. It's one of the G20 economies. We've been very successful in creating other sectors. For example, the financial sector, petrochemical sector, oil and gas sector. And now with Vision 2030, we are unlocking the value of softer sector, let's say tourism, sport, entertainment, and the growth we have been experiencing under the leadership of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is exceptional and unprecedented. And therefore, Saudi Arabia, with its vast nature and amazing hospitality, we're seeing people are interested more and more in coming and enjoying their holidays and vacations, or coming to Saudi Arabia for business in many destinations. In the south, we have the Green Mountains, where people can enjoy the beautiful summer. The Red Sea, we are unlocking the value of the Red Sea through building new resorts and modern resorts, and the Red Sea Global, led by Red Sea Global. And in Al Ula, for example, you can enjoy the history and heritage where many civilizations, like the Nabatean, who came and settled there 3,000 years ago.
Wow.
You can enjoy many things, and we made it very easy for the Americans to visit Saudi Arabia. With in less than 5 minutes, you can get a multiple visa to visit Saudi Arabia and enjoy.
Look, when I was in Riyadh many years ago, His Royal Highness went through the 2030 plan, and it was to diversify the economy away from just being so dominant with oil. But you are obviously one of the most important producers of oil. What would you say the breakdown is when it comes to revenue growth in the Saudi government, oil, and where does tourism fit in there in terms of the breakdown?
Yeah, tourism, oil used to represent about 90% of the government's revenues back in the 90s. Today, it's about 55%. The non-oil source of income have increased dramatically since we launched Vision 2030 back in 10 years ago, just 10 years ago. Tourism, when we launched the National Tourism Strategy back in 2019, tourism used to represent about 3% of the GDP or our economy. Today, it represents 5%. Our aim is to grow to 8 to 10% by 2030. The introduction of new sectors in Saudi Arabia will make the economy more resilient and more sustainable, and will introduce new jobs. For example, in tourism, we added 250,000 jobs in the last 10 years in the sector. We stand at about 1 million jobs in the travel and tourism sector today.
That is a big deal, and is the idea that oil was 90% and now is 55%. Amazing diversification. Your Excellency, thank you. Thank you so much for walking us through the story. We so appreciate it. Minister Ahmed Al Khatib, Tourism Minister in Saudi Arabia. Thank you, sir.
All right,
once again, a year later, promises made, promises kept for President Trump. Joining us now, Laura Ingraham, host of the fabulous Ingraham Angle on Fox News. Laura, thank you for doing this. I mean, you know, it's funny, just he's done most, or he certainly started on or achieved most of what he set out to do. The trouble is pollsters don't know how to poll it. And I'm going to make the case. I think he's very popular, okay? I don't care what the pollsters say. Because he's done what he set out to do, people appreciate that, and he's very popular, and the pollsters be damned. Anyway, that's my one-year anniversary take. What you think?
I think they're mad, Larry, and you keyed in on it. They're mad not because Trump hasn't stuck to basically what he set out to do from the very beginning, but precisely because he's done what he said he was going to do, both in reorienting our trade agreements, locking down the border, beginning to ramp up deportations, going after primarily the worst of the worst out there on the streets, clamping down on crime, and also reinvigorating America's sense of patriotism. The left is deeply anti-American. We see that every day in the streets of Minneapolis, Seattle, Portland, other cities where there's a vicious, violent insurrectionist-like resistance to basic law and order. So he's fleshed all of that out, and we see it a lot more clearly now than we did a year ago. And the left's kind of, they're reeling. They're reeling because Trump is doing what Trump said he was going to do. Has he been able to accomplish everything? Of course not. He has a Federal Reserve chairman who was stubborn on interest rates. He has allies, frankly, that aren't always acting like allies. But he's done an enormous amount, especially given where the United States was under 4 years of an absentee president.
You know, of course, the economy is roaring. The economy is roaring right now. And more, I mean, the one big, beautiful bill worked out. The border, immigration, as you say, he's deporting the worst of the worst. He's changing the culture, Laura. He's changing the culture in ways that he promised to change the culture. You know, religion is back, God is back. Working is a good thing for everybody. Working folks, no matter what race or color you might be. These are things the left hates, and he's doing it, and he won't relent.
Well, and I think, you know, when you saw the big Indiana win last night in the national championship, that love of the game, teamwork, God, quarterback is devoutly religious, loves his mother, loves his father. And you wonder why do people like him so much? Why do people love that kid so much? He's kind of the he's kind of the counter of the radical screaming protester in the street in Minneapolis. He represents the best of America, from an immigrant family, yet a family that puts its pride in its work, in its ethic, and its love for each other. And I think getting back to that love for each other as fellow citizens, as Americans, is what I think most people out there really want. And the left's just consumed by its own fury that Trump's reinvigorating the sense of, I think, of what it means to be an American. And they don't like that.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's an interesting point, the football game yesterday. Actually, both teams, but certainly the Indiana team. It's a good point. You know, sometimes he could go up and do a better selling job, maybe a little too much shock and awe, but that's the way he is, Laura. You know what I mean? That's the way he is. And it's transformational. Listen, he will break something and then he will fix it. And my point, you know, you got Davos now, right? Okay? So the people in Davos who are nitpicking him to death about Greenland and whatever, it's deeper than Greenland. If they keep their yaps shut, he will make their country better also, just like he's made our country better.
You know what I think when I watch their caterwauling about America needing Greenland or not need, when I hear that, I think, when is the last time we ever heard a European leader criticize President Xi, human rights, gobbling up territory, threatening Taiwan, building islands in the South China Sea, everything we know that they do with their secret police forces all over the world? Have they ever grandstanded against Xi? Ever? No. They prefer a dictatorship like China's to the Republican Party under populist leadership. That's a fact. We all know it. Trump, again, has exposed what they're really all about. And God bless. I hope it works for them, but I think we know where it ends up. A country in servitude under the CCP.
Well, you know, it's funny. He's doing the best he can. I mean, I would say, naively maybe, I would say if you let him put something together, whatever he has in mind with Greenland, okay, it's not going to be China and Russia. He will make NATO, wait for it, he will make NATO stronger, Laura. If NATO would let him, he will make NATO stronger. In fact, everything he's doing to elbow Russia and China out of the whole Western Hemisphere will make NATO stronger, will make freedom stronger, will make free people stronger. But they won't let him.
Well, I think one of the challenges here is that the administration has to do a better job of explaining why Greenland matters. Maybe Rubio goes to the Hill. Maybe we have 3 cabinet officials fan out across the country, or the president gives a major address. He doesn't like to necessarily do that, major address to the nation. But if it's imperative, as your banner says, if it's imperative to our national security, the American people are willing to hear that and understand it. I think they'd do well if they did that. They're doing that better, I think, on ICE and the role of ICE and why sanctuary cities cause the chaos and regular America just allows law enforcement to do what it wants. So it's doing a better job on that, but it's got to win both debates, deportation and Greenland. And that means you need a real clear PR push on why both are essential. And I think they do that. They win that debate hand down. Both debates hands down.
I think so. Add in the economy, too. Add in a little selling on the economy wouldn't hurt either. Laura Ingraham, you are the best, Laura Ingraham. Thank you very much. You can catch Laura hosting the Ingraham Angle weeknights, every night, 7 p.m. Eastern on fabulous Fox News. Coming up here on Kudlow, once again, the case for a Greenland deal. We'll talk about it with Mark Thiessen and Doug Holtz-Eakin when Kudlow returns. This is very doable. Don't panic in the stock market either. And remember, folks, Kudlow available as a podcast every weekday right after the show. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on FoxBusinessPodcast.com. Be right back.
Welcome back. We want to share these live pictures. Moments ago, President Trump landing in Zurich. He is en route here to the World Economic Forum in Davos. And he'll be speaking later this morning. There's a lot of anticipation about the president's speech, which is expected to be happening in about an hour and a half. President Trump, of course, marking 1 year since returning to the White House, pointing to falling energy prices as evidence his agenda is working. And he's pledging even further cuts in prices coming. Watch.
We brought the prices down from when I came into office and from what Biden had, way down. We're going to bring them down further. Done very well with Venezuela. And by the way, that even in itself is going to help us bring down the oil prices. We've taken 50 million barrels of oil out of Venezuela in the first 4 days. We've got millions of barrels of oil left. We're selling it on the open market. We're bringing down oil prices incredibly. And when they come down, and they've already come down, again, $1.99 a gallon for oil.
As the president yesterday, a new forecast from Gas Buddy predicting an average gallon of regular gas will fall below $3 in the United States this year. That would be the lowest level since 2020. Joining me now is the Secretary of Energy, Christopher Wright. Secretary, great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be with you, Maria.
So what do you want to say about prices coming down right now? Do you expect that will take place, and how? Why would prices go further down? Tell us about your efforts.
Well, average gasoline prices today are well below $3, but this might be the first year they average below $3 in quite some time. But yeah, the oil supply continues to grow. Oil prices have continued to trend down. We're also making it easier to refine oil in the United States. We're trying to lower that part of the cost chain as well. But the president was elected to drive down energy prices. Gasoline prices, heating prices, electricity prices is a bigger challenge, but we're making big progress there. The huge rises you saw under President Biden, those will soon come to a stop.
Do you worry that when oil prices get to a certain level, below, $60 a barrel, $50 a barrel, that oil companies will pull back and not put the kind of long-term investments in place that you would want because they're not making the money that they were?
Yeah, U.S. American oil and gas companies have just been tremendous innovators. With the shale revolution, they've just changed the global energy situation. But there's always a balance. There's a market-driven price, and when price gets low, it strains their profitability. That also drives innovation. That drives efficiency. But I think that break-even price for them to produce will continue to come down. But short-term, prices move by markets. But I'm very confident in the American oil and gas sector to thrive in the long run.
The president just mentioned the first sale of the Venezuelan oil, that sanctioned oil. Walk us through the process here. So the United States is taking that oil in Venezuela after extracting Maduro out of the country and just, sold it for $500 billion? The first sale?
The first delivery of cash was $500 million. But yeah, it'll be several billion dollars this year. But, think of it before. It was just a quasi-criminal enterprise. Some of that revenue went to the government of Venezuela. Some was siphoned off and sold, by essentially gangsters or rival drug gangs. And then the oil was sold at a huge discount. China was buying this oil at $30 below Brent price. It was huge. It was a discount crude supply to China, importing Iranian and Russian crude. They need to import light oil to produce their heavy oil. And they hosted Hezbollah. Think of that. Hezbollah's Western Hemisphere headquarters was in Venezuela. So today, that oil is coming out. It's all marketed by the United States government. We're getting market prices for it, quickly putting that money into accounts in the name of PDVSA and funneling cash to Venezuela. We're growing their revenues of their government, and we have significant influence over them to start to end the criminality, displace our adversaries, and bring a better society in Venezuela. But of course, it benefits the U.S. tremendously, both in lower energy prices, as you heard the president say, and reduced export of drugs and guns and crime to our country. We're cleaning the hemisphere up.
That's incredible. $500 million for the first sale. What are you expecting for further sales? You think it'll go up to what? You said a couple of $1 billion.
Yeah, well, no, we'll get several $1 billion this year, north of $5 billion this year.
President Trump arriving in Davos after some technical issues that he had on Air Force One, but he's set for a much anticipated speech this morning. Energy will be a big topic, he's told us. Watch this.
Our objective is when we leave office, we're going to have 40% market share. So we've got Taiwan, right? 2 blocks of $250 billion, right? Their companies are going to come here, TSMC. We gave them credit for $100 billion. So they've got another 150 to go, right? Plus Taiwan's going to put $250 billion toward their small and mid-sized companies. So we bring the whole supply chain from Taiwan here, try to get up to 40% market share, right? And then for the rest, the CHIPS Act, which was small, we doubled its size. We basically spent no more money and doubled its size. We have Micron building $200 billion in America. So we are going to invest $1 trillion in semiconductors in America, get up to 40% market share, and at least be able to take care of ourselves. God forbid we need to.
We have the most successful country in the world. We have the hottest country anywhere in the world by far. And this country would have been absolutely stone cold dead. And I'm going to be talking about it. I'm going to be, because, a lot of them could use some of the advice as to what we did. They need energy. You take a look at their energy policy, they're going to destroy themselves with what they're doing with the windmills and all the nonsense. They need energy help badly, or they're going to be in big trouble.
The president there is talking about the Europeans, of course. And yesterday, Scott Bessent made the comment that the Europeans are still buying Russian oil.
Yeah, almost done with that, but still a little bit of natural gas from Russia is sold in Europe and oil is sold in Europe. I think the Europeans have resolved they need to end that. They realize they just built a decades-long dependence on a very unreliable and adversarial supplier. And as you also heard the president say, they also thought the age of hydrocarbons was going to be over in 10 or 20 or 30 years. There's just zero chance of that happening. And I think that return to reality is happening in Europe. They realize if they want to be part of AI, if they want to bring industry back to Europe, if they want to be militarily and economically strong, they got to get realistic about energy again.
No, it's interesting because for a long time we were talking about this competition for semiconductors and, of course, all this need for the right chips to build these data centers and AI. It's actually turned into a power race, an energy race, hasn't it?
It is. The biggest constraint right now in the speed of innovation of AI in the United States is the speed we can grow our electricity production. We've had surging oil and natural gas production, fantastic for America and the world, but we haven't had surging electricity production. We've had a more European climate-focused regulatory environment on our electricity grid that's ended up closing more plants than we've opened. This year, the Trump administration, through our Department of Energy, we stopped the closure of 17 gigawatts of coal capacity that was just going to be shut down. Think how cold it is in the East Coast right now. Do you want blackouts right now? Do you want continued rise in electricity prices? Just nonsense. But we are pivoting that direction exactly the opposite. We're not only going to stop closing reliable resources, we're going to, as rapidly as possible, expand the capacity of our grid so we can continue to lead in AI.
And real quick, how do you, while doing all of that, how do you ensure that electricity prices don't go too high for consumers?
Actually, building new capacity and expanding the demand for electricity is very helpful in keeping prices down. It's states like California that have invested huge amounts of money in closing plants, building wind farms and solar panels, and they've actually produced less electricity today than they did 5 or 10 years ago. That's the road to high prices. The road to low prices is increase the throughput on your existing infrastructure, electricity grid. That's how you get prices down.
Incredible. What a story. Secretary, thanks very much for all of your efforts. We appreciate you here today telling us about it.
Thanks for having me on this beautiful day here in Davos.
All right, Energy Secretary Christopher Wright. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We got a big hour ahead. You're watching Mornings with Maria, live on Fox Business from the World Economic Forum.